Slow starts have led to a lot of bad results for the Jaguars. Just don't know why it took them so long to figure that out. We'll talk about it in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your team every day. We thank you for making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. I'm Tony Wiggins, the host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where you can find wherever you hear or watch podcasts. Make sure you tap in so you do not miss an episode each and every day. Today's show sponsored by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. What up to the everydayers for joining me here? I'll let you know now what we're going to discuss today. Draft talk in the latter part of the show. We'll touch on some stuff that has been kind of floating out there a little bit. I'll let you know what it is when we get there. Vague Doug. Doug is very, very vague about some organizational or inner changes the team has made. It's a bad time to be vague. Should have done that a couple years ago when you announced that Press Taylor was the play caller. Not saying you shouldn't have made him the play caller, but just too much information. TMI, Doug. Slow start leading to bad endings is where we are going to begin. I know y'all are used to this by now. The Jaguars are notoriously slow starters at the beginning of the game. That's a number of reasons, or a number of things that would let you know that it's true. One, Trevor Lawrence usually comes out whenever he's playing. By the way, he's back at practice, ripping the ball, and the ball is just going over people's head, just sailing. The ball sails early in the game for Trevor Lawrence a lot. And it isn't just Trevor. It's not just him. It's like the game plan. It's like they always come into the end of games, even those games that were won, that were close games, they always come in. It's Doug Peterson, the head coach. He's the only one that talks after games, as he should be. But it's always every week they talk about, and Trevor even says it some, how they don't translate what they did in practice to the game. That would seem to me to be something very, very real and understandable if other teams did not have the same process. And usually around the league, it's not mandated, but it's usually kind of universal the way teams practice and the way that they prepare. And most of the people I talk to around the league that have media credentials always talk about practice during the season and how there's, like, for instance, no real heavy lifting for guys that aren't in rehab, because you do more maintenance when it comes to the regular season and kind of maintaining your body because of all the action that you're dealing with every single day. And then it's other things like just knowing the schedule and what the normal schedule is. Pretty much a universal schedule. All of these dudes went to the same, coaching one-on-one about how to do everything, like short weeks, bye weeks, all of those things. So it's usually universal. So you wonder, what is it specifically about the Jaguars that lead them to every single week having a slow start, which leads to a bad ending, even in a close game, and then they say, we're better than that. This is not who we are. At some point after 11 games and 9 of them that you lose, you are exactly who you are. You are who exactly. It's not about the record. It's not about being 2-9, because all 2-9 teams aren't the same. But it is about a team that loses 9 out of 11 games and then tries to say or says that's not who we are. While I can agree that that's not who you want to be or who you aim to be or who you tried to be, it is definitely who you are. Without a question, it is who you are. Eventually, that's what it is. Come to the end of the year, if you ended up 5-12, you're a 5-12 team. And the history books will say that's exactly what you were. The bothersome thing for me is the slow starts always seem to lead up. It's almost as if you go to the game and you know they're going to get off to a very, very slow start early in the game. And you can't tell me it's not bothersome, because it is. So there has to be something going on with the program, which is led by Doug Peterson, that gives you that same result every single week. And it'll only be speculation for me to try to figure out what that is, but that's exactly what I'm here for. We're going to speculate. I believe it has a lot to do with the offensive line. And I know y'all going to say, Wig, you've been beating up on that line forever, man. And they aren't terrible. They just aren't great. Yeah, you're right. I have been beating up on a long time, and I'm going to beat up on them again when I make this point. It appears to me, and it might not be true, but it's just that we're trying to give the benefit. If this happens sometimes, now it happens all the time. I think they actually game plan around a bad offensive line. They game plan around the fact that they know they can't move people when they need them to. And they go in trying to figure out a way to manipulate or matriculate the ball down the field and try to put themselves. And it's like they call plays like they're hoping and wishing. It's almost like what Doug Marrone said back in the day when he said, let's throw something against the wall and see what sticks. They don't seem to come out understanding exactly what it is they want to do. And I think what they end up doing is, and this is just me from the outside looking in, because I don't want anybody to accuse me of trying to act like I've been an NFL coach, but I have been a person who have observed NFL teams, and I listen a lot. It seems like to me when they talk about their game plan, they talk about the things that they see on tape that the other team will allow them to do, to exploit weaknesses from the other team. And I think universally everybody probably does that. But I also think that there's another thing, knowing what it is you do and making a team adjust to you. That requires, in my opinion, very talented players. And when it comes to the trenches, it requires you to have the type of guys that even if you're going to try to stack the box, it ain't going to matter very much. That even if you have a great player in one area or another, it ain't going to matter very much. That even if it's a stalemate between how good the front seven is from the other team and how good you are, we still going to come out here and do what we do. Think about the really good teams in the league, the Detroit Lions. What you think they're going to do every week? You think they're going to build their game plan based on what the other team doesn't do well? Or you going to think they're going to build their game plan on, we know what we do well, and I don't care what you do, you're going to have to take this. And I came to that conclusion because when they come out, the only thing that is common about how they look from a week-to-week basis is they look lost. But the way that they look lost is never the same. It's never the same. It's like every week you don't know what to expect. When we talk about an identity, there's no better place than to force your identity on the people or on the game than to do it early in the games. And I just don't think the Jaguars do it. It's because I think when you can't push something out of the way, you try to get cute and figure out how you can manipulate it out of your way. There are some really, really good teams that leave nothing to be desired or nothing to speculate about. You know exactly how they're coming and when they're coming. And there are also some teams that aren't very good, but they do have an identity. They're just not very good. They are going to come out and do the things that they do early on, and they're going to do it often. Case in point to prove my point. Can I say that? Case in point to prove my point? I'll do it here. We know at some point this year, we realized Brian Thomas Jr. is the Jaguars' most explosive player. There should be 4 design touches every single time the Jaguars get their first possession. I don't care about their coverage. I don't care what they're doing. We're not going to adjust. We'll adjust as things move on. But my problem with this thought process of, okay, well, they didn't give us that. They gave us something else. Remember in Miami when they went in the half and they were up 17-7? They came out, they got the ball at halftime, and they designed plays for Tank Bigsby and Parker Washington. No ETN. No Evan Ingram. No Brian Thomas Jr., who had already impacted the game. It was his first game, and he had already impacted the game early by blowing past Jalen Ramsey and drawing a pass interference. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Why? the first game of the year, are you coming out of the second half when it's time for you to take control of the game and you have design plays for a backup running back and a backup wide receiver? It makes absolutely no sense to me why you would even do that. What did you think you were going to get? There was no advanced scouting done because Miami hadn't played a game yet. Why would you come out in the second half and do something like that? It's because they don't lead with their best stuff. You have to identify who you are, what you are, and come out here and lead with it. Other good teams, you know who you're gonna get. You play Kansas City, you're gonna get Travis Kelce early. You're gonna get Patrick Mahomes, you're gonna get formations, and they're gonna, they might let 3 different people touch the ball, but it's all gonna be their best stuff. You got to hit them with your best combination. Too many times the Jaguars start the game and start the half seeming like they're fishing, or seeming like what they're trying to do is make themselves look real smart because of something that they saw on tape. Well, you know what? We don't trust that evaluation anymore. You just got to come out and lead with your absolute best. Put your best players forward. Too many games as of late where folks are having to ask about Brian Thomas Jr. and then Doug Peterson stands at the podium and say, we got to do a better job of getting in the ball. Dude, come on, man. What are you talking about? At that point, you're 2-7 or 2-8. What do you mean you got to do a better job of getting him the ball? You didn't know that before the game started? That's the kind of stuff that bothers me, and that's the kind of stuff that makes me wish this whole thing just comes to an end and they just start all over. We'll talk more about that and Vague Doug, who said that there were going to be changes, but didn't quite say what the changes were and say he wasn't going to say anything. Too bad he didn't take that advice a couple of years ago. We'll discuss that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is sponsored and brought to you by Skylight Frames. Look, man, the goal is to help people have a top choice for an all-in-one touchscreen digital picture frame that allows you to share photos with your loved ones almost instantly from anywhere in the world. Missing someone this holiday and you just want them to be a part of the festivities from afar? They got you at Skylight. That's right. Do your loved ones live far away but just wish they could be close to you? Maybe gift giving isn't your love language. You overthink it and wind up with something disappointing or nothing at all. If you're buying people or buying someone who has everything, just imagine if you give them pictures, digital pictures that could last for absolutely forever, right? Here's what I want you to do. I want you to take this holiday season to think about making sure that you capture those memories and you can share them with your family. As a special limited time offer for our listeners, you can get $20 off your purchase of a Skylight Frame when you go to skylightframe.com/NFL. That's SKYLIGHTFRAME.com/NFL. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/NFL. And today's show is sponsored by our friends over at FanDuel. Even when your team's losing, you can win. And you can win you some money. That's right. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sports app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats live. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Moving along here on Locked On Jaguars, game week. The guys are back. They played. They had an off. They had an off week last week, a bye week. I saw somebody post a funny graphic that said Jaguars lose to the bye week, 30-27. I thought that was hilarious, right? But they actually didn't lose. They didn't play, right? They're 2-9, and they host the Houston Texans this Sunday in a game that Houston is really needing to win, man, because the Jaguars have to win out and hope that some teams lose some games in order to make the playoffs now. Thank you to the Los Angeles Chargers for that loss. And now it appears that the Jags are, we didn't think they could make it. There was a little window of opportunity. I kind of mentioned it yesterday that nobody wanted to win the AFC South, and that the Jaguars at 2-9 still weren't mathematically eliminated. They're virtually eliminated. They ain't going to playoffs. Okay, I don't think they're going to win this game this week either. Doug Peterson, though, was himself. Doug is always a pleasant dude. Never accused of not being a nice guy. Maybe except the time he kind of snapped at Brent Martineau a little bit. But outside of that, he was vague. Doug said they made some changes, organizational changes, but he wouldn't discuss it. I probably wouldn't have mentioned it. If you're not going to discuss it and tell people why, I probably wouldn't have said anything. But hey, at least he's getting better than he was 2 years ago when he stood up in front of, a year and a half ago, when he stood up in front of everybody in 2023 and said that Press Taylor was going to call plays. And I immediately came right here on Locked On Jaguars and said, ooh, Doug, you just made a huge mistake. You made a huge mistake because you put something in the consciousness of fans that probably wasn't necessary. In fact, I know people that were on the old staff that said there was no difference between 22 and 23. They had the exact same process. Doug just announced it, I think, in hopes of helping Press get credit. And Doug would not get credit, but that Press Taylor would get credit. Maybe what happened is after the first year when they went to the playoffs and Press Taylor did call a lot of those games down the stretch in the second half, because I heard this was their process. I heard Doug comes out with the script, goes at it early, and then at some point after those first 20 plays, Press takes over and calls the rest of the game. I heard that's the way it was in Philly. I heard that's the way it's been in 21, 22, 23, and 24. Now, the thing is once you say there's something different, and then it looks different or inconsistent, people start to get upset about it. It's funny, though, people weren't upset when they were 8-3. And they were 8-3 at this point last year. After 11 games, they were 8-3. Nobody said anything about Press Taylor. Nobody said that the offense sucked, that it stunk. They just said, you know what, it'll get going, because they were 8-3 primarily based on the effort of the defense. And the defense at that time was one of the two best defenses in the league, getting turnovers and making teams turn the ball over. And then it took on a life of its own, and all I heard was press every single time. And I begged and implored people, don't do that, because Doug isn't going to fire him, because it'll be like firing himself. And then whatever you saw from the offense, you saw it because it was Doug's fault, because he's ultimately responsible for it. It still did not subside. And now fans have gotten to the point where they want to get rid of everybody. They want to get rid of Doug. They want to get rid of Ryan Nielsen. They want to get rid of Press. They want to get rid of Trent. And I understand that. So Doug came out and he was real vague. He said they made some changes and structural changes, and we'll see. At this point, I don't understand the point of it unless Doug knows something that I don't know, unless Shad is giving him some sort of vote of confidence, him and Trent, like they're going to give him a chance to get it right. And don't be surprised. I'll do a show tomorrow about that. Don't be surprised if that happens. I don't think it's going to happen, and I hope it doesn't. But, man, don't be surprised if Shad says, you know what? I hear y'all. What do y'all need? We're going to try it one more time. I'm starting to get this weird feeling, man, that something weird may happen. Whether it's both of them keeping a job, or whether it's one of them keeping the job and the other one not keeping it, or them making some more staff changes or doing something else. Anything to admit that you probably made a mistake and you got it wrong, right? Did you hear when somebody asked Doug who was it that told Shad that this was the greatest Jaguar team ever? Doug says, I'm not privy to those conversations. Maybe there was no conversation. Maybe Shad came up with that on his own. Or maybe Doug saying, yeah, it was somebody else. It wasn't me. And Doug said, I ain't doing that. I mean, Doug Peterson wouldn't know how talented the Jaguar team was in the past because he wasn't here. And that's usually not something coaches don't do that. That doesn't even sound like the kind of conversation a coach would have, because the coach only is concerned with tomorrow, man. Those dudes don't even watch college football during the season. It's just what it is, man. They just don't sit there and talk about the past like that. They don't talk about old Jaguar team. Yeah, this team's better than the one in 2017. Well, how the hell would you know? You were coaching the Eagles, winning the Super Bowl. You weren't paying attention to 2017. And you damn sure wasn't looking in 97 and 99 either. So how would you know that kind of stuff? So it's just that these little conversations and the comfort level, it's starting to really, I'm being real vague when I'm talking to y'all right now, but I'm starting to get afraid that all of the things that I think or we think that will happen to make this team get better and improve, none of them might not happen. It's kind of weird that I feel that way. Like I said, I'll make sure I discuss that with you tomorrow. I'm going to hit some draft stuff too, man, because I put out some information about the draft, I believe early this week and at some point last week. And it kind of ran off and it kind of ran off, you know what I'm saying? And I took a lot of questions and fielded a lot of questions for it. I'll tell you what people who do the draft for a living are not doing right now that a lot of people think they are doing. I'll talk about that in just a second here as we continue with Locked On Jaguars. Today's show is brought to you and sponsored by Hillsdale College. If you want to get smarter, man, and you don't have a whole bunch of time and you can't just sit around and thumb through endless amounts of social media content all day, well, Hillsdale is good for you. Our sponsor, Hillsdale College, is offering more than 40 free, that's right, free online courses, including stuff like Constitution 101, the meaning and history of the Constitution, Introduction to Free Market Economics, The Great American Story, A Land of Hope, The Rise and Fall of the Roman Republic, and a brand new documentary style course on Marxism, socialism, and communism. Now, here's what you need to do, man. All of Hillsdale, you need to know this. All of Hillsdale courses are self-paced so that you can start whenever and tune in wherever. Plus, you can go deeper with readings, quizzes, discussions, or just enjoy the lectures. Go right now to hillsdale.edu/locked-on to enroll. There's no cost and it's easy to get started. That's hillsdale.edu/locked-on to register. HILLSDALE.edu/locked-on. Third and final segment here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. I appreciate you making us your first listen. A lot of draft talk starting to float around, and anybody that follows this podcast knows that I really, really don't like doing that prematurely. I look at it. I start looking at prospects. I keep my legal pad and my notebook and stuff all stacked up to see if the season goes along and if it's starting to shape up the way I thought or if it's different, and I'll go in and make notes. I do it year round, right? I don't sit and do it all year round as if that's my only sole profession, because it would just eat up all of my time. And it kind of cloud my judgment a little bit because things ebb and flow. You don't have to speculate about what happens because you can always go once the end comes. You can look back and compare everything, and you can do all of that work then. So I did, however, give in to fans' demands to talk about who I want as a coach and want as a GM. And then I talked about, okay, if those guys come in, who would I go after in free agency? And then who would I go after in the draft based on the information that I have now? But I tell you what, the people that I call and ask about players, you know what some of them say? I haven't really gone deep dive into them yet, but we have taken a look at them. And if you think this and this and this, you're probably not far off. That kind of stuff. They haven't done their deep dives on these dudes. They haven't done their total evaluation of guys. I don't know how people can come to a conclusion right now that like Kelvin Banks is not a good left tackle. I said yesterday that the old Will Campbell people that jumped all over me about Banks after the Georgia game when he gave up one pressure and one sack based on the quarterback holding the ball too long. And they assumed that just because the offensive line struggled that they were terrible. Nobody said anything when that same LSU offensive line gave up 7 sacks to Florida. Nobody came to me, beat me over the head with a Will Campbell bat all of a sudden, because that's what happens. People want to be right, and when they realize they can't be right, they just be quiet, which I wish a lot of people would actually take that advice. When you're not right, be quiet, but they don't. But here we go. Teams just aren't making decisions about players yet. So when pretend scouts or fans hit me up with who a guy is and what he is, I can accept it if it's your opinion, but I just can't accept it when you act like it's law. Because one, we all know that none of us make decisions about players, right? Two, the people who do the hard work about these prospects, it hasn't been done yet. The reports are being written, they're being turned in. Folks are coming up with a plan about who they may want to prioritize, but nobody's making a decision. I see people talking about they're giving draft grades to guys. I see people saying draft grades were given to dudes that weren't even draft eligible last year. That is a lie. If it's not a lie, find me one person that says that they do it. Find me a person who doesn't do it for a living. Find me a person who used to do it for a living. And tell me that people are already putting draft grades on prospects, especially guys that aren't even eligible for the draft. That is just not true. So I don't know. That's why I don't entertain a whole bunch of that stuff. I just don't even know where to start, because the people that do this for a living don't do that like that. Now, they may like a player. You may come up with, you may go, like I could have told you 4 years ago when Travis Hunter was a junior in high school, he's going to be a number one pick in the draft one day, barring injury. Like Whoopie-Doo, the dude as a junior was the best high school player in the country. I can tell you right now that Jeremiah Smith is probably going to end up a first-round draft pick, right? I mean, yeah, it ain't hard. I can tell you right now that Bain kid, Reuben Bain down at Miami, is going to be a first-round draft pick, or at the very least a second-round draft pick. It's probably true, right? It's probably something that we can all say, yeah, I think that's going to happen. Yeah, that's it. But nobody has draft grades on anybody, man. So it's all, I gave it to you, me personally, I gave it to you just for you to have something to figure out, like, okay, this is a blueprint. Maybe they can do, if these guys are as good as we think they are. But it's not etched in stone. Nobody's evaluated anybody yet. That's why you see guys fly up the draft board. And we're not just talking about at the combine. We're talking about once people really, really start looking at film. Look at anybody's mock draft right now that has a reputation, and then look at the one at the end of the year. Then look again after the Senior Bowl. Then look again after the combine. Probably going to look totally different. So it's almost an exercise in futility to sit here and argue with people about that kind of stuff. Don't get all caught up just because the person you like, somebody says that he ain't going to be a high pick, or don't get caught up if the person you do like, somebody says he's going to be a high pick, and then later on you end up disappointed. Nobody knows anything except those scouts. The GMs don't even have the reports finalized right now. It's just not, it just doesn't go the way a lot of people are pretending that this goes. And I think sometimes people get ticked off when you don't want to engage in the discussion. But I tell you what you can engage in. I gave you my personal opinion in a recent episode in the last week about possibilities for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And like I said, it is possibilities. It's not something I want to argue about. It's not something that's etched in stone. It's just right now, it's just not the time to do all of that. It's always time to watch Locked On NFL, though. A double dose of it hits you up every single day on Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcast. Tyler Rowland in the morning, the madman, will hit you with a double shot of espresso and use the local experts that know your teams better than anybody else to let you know what's going on. And then I slide through in the barbershop, man, and we give it to you how we give it to you. Laid back, cool, but funny, right? Locked On NFL, wherever you get your podcast, make sure you check it out and do not miss an episode. Also, chime in over on Amazon Music. Locked On NFL is on Amazon Music. All right, man, we'll talk tomorrow about that subject that we spoke about earlier, where we'll really, really, really take a hard look at the possibilities that maybe things won't change the way most of y'all think, or most of us believe they should. We'll talk about it tomorrow on Locked On Jaguars. You guys take care of each other. I do the same.